I would like to formally apologize to England for my evil Mr. Darcy impression. 'Tis the season to be jolly, everyone, and to get everyone in even more of a Christmassy mood, today I'm talking about a Christmas novel. And yes, I know I am uploading this after Christmas. I am actually recording this on Christmas Eve, but shh, Christmas doesn't actually end until we say it does, or at least until January 1st. So, I don't want to hear it. After the last incredible book that I read, I was looking for something fun and festive to read, so I turned to my favorite internet library, Internet Archive, to find some fun Christmas tales to get me in the mood for the season. The search wasn't yielding any fruit until I found the book that I'm going to be talking about today, Christmas Bayou, a Regency-era romance novel that takes place, as you may have guessed, during the Christmas season. I'm like a fake Regency fan. I haven't read many of the classic Regency novels such as Wuthering Heights, Jane Eyre, or Bridgerton, but I have read Emma and Pride and Prejudice, so it's safe to say that I'm an expert on the genre. And before anybody says it, no, I haven't seen the 1995 series. I'm sorry, please don't attack me. I will. Eventually. Soon. With that said, the story sounded like a lot of fun, so grab your jingle bells, your mistletoe, and come along with me on the wild ride that is this story. My only regret is that I don't actually have a period-accurate outfit to wear for this. You're just gonna have to make do with the beautiful sweater that I got from my grandmother. Our story begins in London. It's early December, and our protagonist, a Miss Judith Easton, is preparing for her first society outing of the year. You see, Judith is a widow, and her husband, Andrew, died last year in a fight. She already has 2 kids, Kate, who is 3, and Rupert, who is 6. Also living with them is Andrew's older sister, Amy, who is 36, but she's unmarried because as a kid she had smallpox, which meant that she was underdeveloped and she never actually debuted in society, and so she was just living at home with her family, but now she's living with Judith to help her through her mourning period. Now, to put a note real quick in this, Judith may be the main character of this novel, but Amy is very important, so don't forget about her. She is going to be coming into the story in a really big way. So Judith is getting ready for the event that she's attending. It's a soiree being held by a Lord and Lady Clancy. She wants to get out and about because this Christmas is a very big change for her, because, you know, her husband is dead. She's decided that she doesn't want to spend Christmas with her family in Scotland, and she doesn't want to go spend it with Andrew's family because all they do is drink and play cards, and she was always miserable there. And that is important. Put a pin in that, remember it for later. One of Andrew's old friends comes to escort Judith to the party, and everyone is super excited to see her, but the evening takes a turn for the worse when someone walks in who she never expected to see there.
Here comes a new challenger!
This stranger is none other than Maxwell Denby, aka the Marquess of Denby, aka Max, aka the man that Judith was betrothed to at 18, who she broke off the engagement with and ran away to marry Andrew. So suffice to say, this reunion is not a happy one. It was 7 years and 7 months, to be exact. She had been to the opera with him and 2 other couples. He had escorted her home, kissed her hand in the hallway of her father's house. He had never kissed more than her hand, and bidden her good night. That was the last he had seen of her, until now. Yeah, so this is awkward. Max is described as being tall, well-built, and about 35 years of age. Despite the fact that he's very well liked and considered handsome, Judith, during their brief engagement, had always found him really frightening, which, you know, is understandable considering that she was only 18 when they were betrothed. We also get a brief glimpse into Max's point of view. His memory of their time together was far more positive, but her rejection of him hit him incredibly hard, to the point where he is now convinced that he utterly hates her, and is seeking revenge. Now hold up, what exactly does he mean by that? Because, you know, when a man is talking about revenge against an ex, I'm just saying. Worry not though, I'm gonna nip that concern in the bud. Max has no murderous intentions with Judith. He is still kind of a freak though, and his full plan will be revealed very soon. See, when Max first came to London, he didn't even know that Judith was going to be there, let alone that she was going to be a widow now. But as soon as he finds this out, he is immediately ready to execute his master plan for revenge. His plan isn't really thought out though, so he starts by just trying to make Judith as uncomfortable in his presence as humanly possible, and is also ingratiating himself with Judith's family, as in her children and Amy. Max hears from one of his acquaintances that Judith takes her family for walks in Hyde Park almost every day, so he decides to ride his horse over and accidentally comes upon them. Judith is of course suspicious when this happens, but he seems perfectly civil. The children are fascinated with his horse, and he gives them both rides on it. This is actually one of my favorite things about Max. It's that he's very good with children, and he genuinely likes them, and every time he has interactions with kids in this book, it's very sweet. Judith makes the mistake of mentioning that she's going to another society ball that night, so of course, when she gets there, he comes in and spends half the evening just staring at her from the corner. He watched her until he knew she was aware of his presence, and then he continued to watch her, knowing that his gaze would disconcert her. He knew that even when she was not darting glances at him, she was aware of his steady scrutiny. And he knew that when she looked at people or objects close to him, smiling in apparent enjoyment of the evening, she was really seeing him out of the corner of her eye. He knew that when she looked full at him, it was in the hope that his attention had been taken by someone or something else. He even goes as far as dancing with her, but they barely talk the whole time, and he just keeps staring at her. This sets people gossiping that, oh, he's still interested in her after all this time and after what she did, but Judith doesn't see any reason to believe this. After all, he was being civil, but he seemed just as uncomfortable with her as she did with him. She tries to put the whole thing out of her mind and just focus on having a cozy Christmas with her family. She and Amy make plans to go shopping for ribbons and greenery to decorate the house for Christmas and have a magical holiday. Their plan is rudely interrupted, however, because with no warning, Max shows up at their house one afternoon and basically invites himself in for tea. Very polite. He's charming and he's kind with everyone besides Judith, and soon enough is perfectly chummy with both Amy and the kids. Then with no warning, he invites them all to a fair that's happening on the Thames the very next day. He intentionally asks in front of all of them so that Judith is basically forced to say yes, because if she says no, then she's just gonna seem like an asshole to her whole family. Judith acquiesces and says, okay, we can go, but at this point she's having even more doubts about his intentions than before. He was stalking his prey. She could feel it. And he was clever enough to get to her through her unsuspecting sister-in-law and children. Because after 8 years, he wanted her back? Because he wanted to fix his interest with her, as Amy seemed to think? No, not that. There was a certain expression in his eyes when he looked at her. He was not stalking her out of any soft sentiments, of that she was sure. But why, then? Punishment? Had she so wounded his pride and sense of consequence that she must be punished even 8 years after the fact? Judith knows that some shit is up, but rather than listen to her feelings, she ignores them, so we've got a lot more shenanigans to get through. When I said the fair was happening on the Thames, I did mean on the Thames, because in this story, the Thames has frozen over, so they're actually having the fair on the ice. When I read this, I was like, okay, you can tell that the book is set in the past because global warming is real. Surprisingly. And according to Google, the Thames hasn't actually frozen over since the winter of 1963. Anyways, the fair is beautiful and they all have a grand old time. Some of the ice even starts to melt between Max and Judith, pun fully intended.
You suck!
There's even more inadvertent bonding between Max and the children, and he has a moment of sort of bittersweet reflection while carrying Kate through the fair. He had a strange feeling, almost as if butterflies were fluttering through his stomach. She was warm and relaxed inside his coat. He could hear her deep breathing when he bent his head closer. No, it was more than butterflies. He felt almost like crying. She might have been his, he thought, if only things had turned out differently. She might have had his dark hair or her mother's fair coloring. He swallowed and shook off the thought.
Judith Easton had seen to it that that had never happened.
The most important part of this fair, though, is when they meet a fortune teller. Now, I almost expected this part to just be one-off and not actually relate to the story, but this fortune teller sequence actually lays the groundwork for everything else that happens in the story. Amy is the first one to talk to the fortune teller, and she is told that she's going to find love soon and have lots of children in her future. But Amy dismisses this because, in her mind, she's just an old maid and there's no family for her. I gotta say, I feel really sorry for her because the more we learn about her story, the worse it is, okay? So Amy was never actually introduced to society, like I said, not just because she had smallpox and was sickly as a kid, but because her father thought that she was completely unmarriageable. And so that's why she doesn't want to go to any of the society events that Judith does. Judith is told similarly that romance is in her future, but she dismisses it too as being just a lie that the woman is telling to get her customers money. The real surprise, however, is the fortune that Max receives, which is warning him that there is a darkness inside of him that threatens to snuff out all the light in his life.
Christmas may save you if you keep in mind that it is a time of peace and goodwill. I see a great battle raging in your soul between light and darkness, but the joy of Christmas will help the light to banish the darkness, if you do not fight too strongly against it.
Now Max knows in his heart that he should feel bad for his revenge plot against Judith, but he's in deep denial, so he just tells himself that the fortune teller doesn't have any idea what she's talking about and ignores it. Now, the whole happy pretend family goes on all sorts of outings like this. They go to the Tower of London, they go to St. Paul's Cathedral, and even go to the theater. The whole time, the kids and Amy are growing closer to Max, and Judith herself is realizing that she does find Max attractive, but there's still something telling her that trusting him probably isn't a good idea. I want to take a quick moment to acknowledge Amy here, and something that she says when they go to the theater that absolutely breaks my heart.
Amy was enchanted and as excited as any child being given a rare treat. She had never been to the theater before and had never seen so many splendidly dressed people all gathered in one place. Best of all, she thought, gazing about her, no one was staring at her. She was a very plain, very middle-aged lady, she told herself, not a monster. Sometimes her family members had protected her, or themselves, so closely that she had felt as if she must be some freak of nature.
She is just a beautiful gem of a person, and the whole time that I was reading this, I was just hoping with everything that I had that she would get a happy ending. As it gets closer to Christmas, Judith is preparing to bring this whole uncomfortable period of reunion to a close as Max prepares to return to Denby. But a wrench is thrown in her plans by Max coming over one day and asking them to join him for the holidays at his estate. He intentionally does this in front of Amy and the kids, again, telling them how Christmas at Denby is so much better than at London, there's so many children there to play with, there's games and festivities, and Judith doesn't have much choice but to agree so that, again, she doesn't look like an asshole in front of her family. The date is set for them to join Max in Denby, and so he departs their London home for the last time. I've been vague, but at this point, Max's plan might be kind of obvious. He was a jilted lover, and he made it his whole personality for the past 8 years. So Judith thinks that his only goal is to embarrass her, but really he now wants Judith to feel the same pain that he felt back when she rejected him.
He would make it succeed. For now, more than ever, having seen her again, having had some of the old wounds aggravated again, he wanted her to suffer, almost exactly as he had suffered. Almost exactly.
And this is what I mean by Max being evil Mr. Darcy. He's not exactly malicious, but he's taking advantage of her feelings and social convention to make her fall in love with him, only to betray her. I do think it's funny because up to this point, and as we'll see, the plan isn't very clearly thought out. He has an end goal in mind, but he has no clear idea of how to get there. And for the rest of the books, he keeps having like mini crash outs because he realizes he's not actually good at being an evil genius. Before we move on from the beginning, I just want to briefly bring up Judith's late husband Andrew. So, while the official story of how he died was that he was killed in a home invasion, the truth is that he died in a bar brawl. The marriage between him and Judith was not a happy one at all. Once the initial charm ran out after their elopement, who he really was became clear. He was an alcoholic, a womanizer, emotionally abusive to Judith, and charming her and taking advantage of the fact that she was unfamiliar with the world and unhappy with her arranged match. And there's something even more sordid about him. But first, it's Christmas time. I moved back from the camera a little bit because I realized I was really close to it. Oops. Okay. A few days later, Judith, Amy, and the children arrive at Max's manor with a winter storm right behind them. All save Judith are looking forward to the holiday. They're greeted at the door by Max. Now, Judith, with this brief time of separation, has realized that she has a lot of apprehension about him, because unlike with everyone else, his charm and his gentlemanly behavior isn't working.
It was a raw, sexual awareness of him that she felt, a sort of horrified attraction, a purely physical thing, for she did not like him at all, and that was a gross understatement. She disliked him and was convinced, despite his words and actions, that he disliked her too. She distrusted him. And yet she wanted him in a way she had never wanted any man or expected to do. She wanted him in a way she had never wanted Andrew, even during those weeks when she had been falling in love with him and contemplating breaking a formally contracted betrothal. And so if the Marquess of Denby was trying to punish her, and it had to be that, then he was succeeding. She was a puppet to his puppeteer. For the wanting him brought with it no pleasure, no longing to be in his company, but only a distress and a horror. Almost a fear.
It's hard for Judith to hold on to these misgivings, however, because for one, she and Max literally have a moment straight out of the movie, because when she's getting out of the carriage, she quite literally falls into his arms. And for the first time, he gives her a true, genuine smile. This literally is their meet cute moment. It's the next thing that she learns that greatly raises her opinion of him, however. So when Max was selling the idea of Christmas with him to Judith, he mentioned that there would be a lot of children for Kate and Rupert to play with. The assumption is that all these kids are his nieces and nephew from family who come to spend the holiday with him, but the truth is very different, and it's actually very sweet. With the help of his friend, a Mr. Spencer Cornwall, who is a character we will be seeing a lot of soon, Max began finding boys and girls who were living in the London slums and bringing them to live in the local village. Now there's 20 of them, and they're all receiving an education and have a safe home to live in.
How could one love riffraff, and frequently foul-mouthed and rebellious riffraff at that? But he did. Spence had gathered the children, abandoned orphans, thieving ruffians who had no other way by which to survive, gin addicts, one sweeps boy, one girl who had already been hired out twice by her father for prostitution. "I believe that the mistake many people make," he said, "is looking at the whole vast problem of social poverty and social inequality and feeling helpless and guilty, for there is nothing the average man or woman can do to solve a universal social problem. But all of us can do something on a very small scale. There are thousands of children in England suffering untold hardships at this very moment, but 20 children who would have swelled those numbers by only an infinitesimal amount are well fed and well loved, having their futures secured, and are at that moment having a boisterous good time."
This interaction and the way that Max interacts with Judith's children is the number one thing that really endeared his character to me. His revenge plan against Judith may be ridiculous and a total dumpster fire, but it's good to see that underneath that charm that there is a caring and loving person. Not long after Judith's arrival, all the children arrive at the mansion from the village with their caregivers, including Mr. Cornwell. The children are a super rowdy bunch, and the author makes sure that we know that they're poor London children by having them all say, "Governor," a lot. But it's clear that they're all very sweet, and that they adore Max based on the way that they all crowd around him as soon as they arrive. Now, Amy finds herself very taken by Spencer Cornwell. He even flirts with her during their introduction, and while Amy, who's completely unused to this kind of attention, just assumes he's being friendly, don't worry, this isn't just a fluke. Besides the children, there's a number of other guests staying at the mansion during the holiday. There's an older couple of Sir William and Lady Tushingham, perhaps the most British names ever written. The Clancys from the soiree, an older gentleman named Mr. Rockford, and Max's great aunts, Edith and Frida. They don't actually come into the story very much, but I thought I'd mention them just in case they come up later because I know I will randomly be saying some shit sometimes. The first big activity that everyone does is wander the grounds to find decorations, to gather holly, mistletoe, and a Yule log. Now Judith is warming up some to Max now, and they both end up on opposite sides of a snowball fight with all the kids. Max ends up chasing her with a snowball away from the main battle, and in a quiet moment in the snow together, their tension begins to bubble up.
The laughter was dying from her face, only inches from his. A great awareness was taking its place in her eyes. He could feel his heart beating in his throat and in his ears. He moved his head an inch closer to hers, his eyes straying down to her mouth. Her lips were parted, he saw. The temptation was great, almost overpowering. One taste while everyone's attention was distracted and they were partially shielded anyway by the snowbank. One taste, though it was far too early for such familiarity. But he had a plan to follow, a plan that called for greater patience and caution. "Revenge can be very sweet sometimes," he told her in a low voice, keeping his eyes on her mouth as he brought his hand from behind her and pressed his snowball very firmly against her face. "Ah!" she said, sputtering snow.
When they go back to the house to put up the decorations, one of the kids holds a sprig of mistletoe over Judith and Max. They do kiss, and while in the moment it's just to amuse the children, with all that Judith has seen since they arrived, she can't help but feel that the moment is quite significant. Now, returning to my favorite girlie, Amy, she has been enlisted to help with the Christmas pageant that the children from the village are putting on. Now, Spencer learned that she's able to play the piano, and he insisted that they needed her help and that she'd be perfect to help with the children. Amy is incredibly flattered by this, and she agrees with no hesitation. While she's spending her time with her new friend, Amy remembers something important.
And she remembered suddenly a dark tint on the River Thames and the prediction about children, lots of children, and about a comfortable gentleman of middle years whom she would soon meet. But how foolish, she thought, giving herself a mental shake. How very foolish. Mr. Cornwell would surely run 1,000,000 miles if he could just read her mind. Poor Mr. Cornwell. And her father would have 40 fits if she ever decided to fix her choice on a gentleman who worked for his living, caring for and educating a house full of ragamuffins from the London slums. It sounded like a rather blissful life to Amy. Silly, she told herself.
Oh, Amy, she's so self-deprecating, but I love her so, so much. And she's been through so many terrible things in her life. I just want her to have happiness more than anything. In between decorating and pageant rehearsal, the whole gang goes to the local lake for skating. At first, Judith was planning to sit it out because she's terrible at skating, but Max coaxes her onto the ice, and he stays right beside her so that she doesn't fall. After skating for a while, he asks her a question.
"You are not sorry you came, Judith?" he asked. "I did trick you into coming. You realize that. You would not have come if I had asked you alone, would you?" "No," she said. "And are you still sorry?" he asked. "Would you return home tonight if you could?" She swallowed and looked sharply away from him. "The children are having a wonderful time," she said, "and so is Amy." "You know," he said, that is not what I am asking you, Judith." "I don't know," she said, and she looked back up into his eyes again. "I don't know. There is something about you I do not trust."
The fact that she doesn't trust him, despite having all these reasons in front of her to think otherwise, it just drives me crazy in the best way. Because we as the reader know that Max isn't to be trusted, but even so, he seems like such an apologetic and generally likable person that it's hard to side with Judith, because even though we know she's right, we still feel like she isn't. It's just so good. Christmas Eve is here, it's a busy, busy day, and there's a lot to get through, so hold on to your reindeer. Max spends Christmas Eve morning delivering gift baskets to all of the villagers. The entire time, he can't help but wonder about what might have been if Judith was his wife and she was here by his side, running his estate, delivering these gifts. When he returns to the manor afterwards, he stumbles upon Judith and the children asleep in the nursery, and it sets off this torrent of emotions inside of him, because he's simultaneously bittersweet, but also angry at what was stolen from him by Andrew and by Judith. Max wakes Judith up and invites her on a sleigh ride with him around the property. He takes this scenic route until they end up on a place where they're completely isolated and they can view the entire estate. It's here, in this intimate, private moment, that Judith tells Max something that completely takes him by surprise. It's something about Andrew that she hasn't told to anyone else ever.
He had often wondered, since, though she had been beautiful and well-born, she had not been particularly wealthy. He had wondered why Easton had saddled himself with a wife when his subsequent actions had seemed to prove that it was not for love. "He loved you, I suppose," he said. "You did not know," she said. "I thought these things quickly became general knowledge in the gentlemen's clubs." He felt a pulse beat in his throat. Had Easton raped her? "Tell me," he said. She turned to look at him and smiled ruefully before looking away down the hill. "It was a wager," she said. "It seemed that there were enough gentlemen willing to wager a great deal of money on the belief that Andrew could not snatch me away from a wealthy viscount and heir to the Marquess of Denby." The pulse was hammering against his temples. "He told me," she said, "after we had been married for about a year. He thought it a huge joke. He thought the story would amuse me." There was one thing the Marquess wished fervently. He wished that Easton were still alive, so that he could kill him.
Yeah, so remember when I said that there was something even shittier about Andrew? Yeah, this is it. There it is. And even Max, with all the anger that he has towards Judith, he can't pretend that she wasn't wronged. It fundamentally changes her view of her going forward. Though it isn't quite enough to make him abandon his terrible plan. While these crazy revelations are happening, Amy is still in the village with Spencer and the children. The two of them are continuing to grow closer and closer. So Spencer tells Amy to drop the honorifics and just refer to him by his given name, and she tells him the same. The two of them have bonded over their shared love of children and their desire for social change, and there's a passage that I have to share because I just thought it was really funny, in a good way.
"You like children," he said, patting her hand. "I've watched you today talking with him. That is sometimes the most neglected part of our job. There's always so much to do and so much talking to be done to them as a group. I do not always find as much time as I would like to talk with them individually." "They have such fascinating stories to tell," she said. He looked down at her. "And all of them quite unfit for a lady's ears, I have no doubt," he said. "I should not have encouraged you to spend a day with us." "A lady's ears are altogether underused," she said, provoking another chuckle from him. "Perhaps we should be told more of these stories by our governesses or at school and spend a little less time dancing or sketching or learning how to converse in polite society." "My dear Amy," he said, patting her hand again, "we will be making a radical out of you and scandalizing your family." "Is caring about children being radical?" she asked. "When the children are from the slums of London, yes," he said. "Well then," she said briskly, "I must be a radical."
Like, come on, y'all. This is so sweet. And Amy, we'll make a socialist of you yet. Just you wait. Between the two of them, they prepare the children for a night of caroling in the village. When evening comes, they lead their group through the village all the way to the manor, bringing Christmas spirit with them. And once they reach the manor, Spencer and Amy have their own cute moment where they share a brief kiss under the mistletoe. Like, I know that Judith and Max already did this earlier, but Spencer and Amy are very special to me, okay? Like, I care about them so much more. I can't help it. I know they're side characters, but... I'm just so happy. The entire household makes a trip to church for Christmas Eve service, but it's on the way home that both Judith and Max have a realization that they're in love.
She had never dreamed that she could come to like him, and more than that, to admire him. She had never dreamed that she would stop fighting the strong physical attraction she felt for him. She had stopped fighting, she realized. She'd stopped that afternoon, if not before. She could still feel the warmth of his hand on hers beneath the muff, the hand that was now spread on one of his thighs. She glanced at it. It was a slim, long-fingered hand, which nevertheless looked strong. She was falling in love with him, she realized with sudden shock. No, perhaps it was already too late. She had fallen in love with him, with the Marquess of Denby. It was incredible, but it was true.
Max's feelings are of course more complicated because this throws a wrench in his incredible revenge plan.
If he was so close to reaching his goal, then surely it would be possible to use his triumph in another way. It would be possible to secure a lifetime of happiness for himself. For he had made a discovery that afternoon, or rather, he had admitted something that had been nagging at his consciousness for some time, perhaps ever since he had set eyes on her at Nora's soiree. He was still in love with her. The love that he had converted to hatred so long ago was still love at its core.
They share some heated kisses in the snow as their muddled feelings begin to spill over against their will, and the both of them are left wondering if Christmas Day is going to bring something more. Christmas is here. As the sun rises, both Judith and Amy are left wondering if this day is going to bring a twist in their budding romances. Amy, on the one hand, is kind of sad because if Judith does end up finding love with the Marquess, that means that she's going to have to return to her unloving family. And in her mind, it's unlikely that Spencer would ever want her, just an old maid. Judith is more positive because while she's nervous, she's cast aside most of her misgivings about Max and fully admits that she loves him and she was wrong about him. Girl, you weren't wrong. You were right. You were so right. I was literally shaking while reading this because I just love this kind of plot and they make me go crazy because we know that when the truth is revealed, it is going to be horrible. Like, I love it and I hate it so much because it's such a good way of creating tension for both the characters and the reader. The entire Christmas celebration at Denby is beautiful and the whole day is filled with cheer. Max personally hands out gifts to all of the servants and all of his guests, and there's a delicious Christmas dinner followed by fun games in the ballroom for the children. In the afternoon, the children hold their pageant for the household and the other guests who arrive for the ball that evening. Judith is having a marvelous time, and for her, this is the best Christmas that she's ever had since she was a child, and far better than those that she spent with Andrew's family.
No one had played a single hand of cards all day, and except for the wine at dinner, she had not noticed anyone drinking any alcohol. What a difference from Christmas at Avonlea, Judith thought. Taking a chair in the Marquess's ballroom, nodding to neighbors she had noticed at church the night before, and waiting for the pageant to begin.
At the Christmas ball that night, love is in the air, especially for Amy and Spencer. While the two of them are dancing, Spencer tells her something that makes her practically burst with happiness.
He patted her hand. "You are a beautiful little person, Amy Easton," he said. "Where have you been hiding all my life?" She laughed. "That is the first time I have ever been called beautiful," she said. "My family hid me at home. They were afraid I would be hurt if I went out into the world. They clipped my wings, you see." "Was it smallpox?" he asked her. She nodded. "Only me," she said. "It afflicted no one else in the family, for which I can only be thankful, of course." "If they had only allowed you from home," he said, "you would have been called beautiful many times, Amy. Your beauty fairly bursts out from inside you." "Oh," she said.
Listen, while I was reading this, literally all I could think of was the oh moment that you see in so many fanfics. Like, Amy and Spencer are literally having the most perfect friends to lovers arc, and I am so here for it. Catch me rewriting this story from Amy's POV and putting it on AO3. I am so dead serious. I am so serious. I literally have already started writing it. Do not play with me. Meanwhile, Max and Judith have been dancing the night away. Specifically, they've been doing the waltz, which there's a funny moment here where it's mentioned that this dance is kind of scandalous, and I was curious if this is actually true. Was the waltz considered a scandalous dance? That aside, their dancing eventually leads them out of the ballroom and into the Great Hall. So it's here that Judith admits that she misjudged Max, and not just now, but back when they were first betrothed to be married. Max is taken aback by this, and the admission makes him feel even more uncertain than he already was about his revenge plan. Rather than confess, he tells Judith to have the next afternoon free, when they will have time to do what it is that they both wish to do. Judith interprets this the same way that you and I do, and she lays awake all night, thinking about what awaits her the next day.
He was going to make love to her. Her breath caught in her throat, and she set her head back against the wood paneling behind her. That very day, he was going to make love to her, and she had not noticed any resistance in herself, though she had been awake for more than an hour already and had lain awake for an hour after the ball before sleeping. She was going to allow it. She was going to allow him to take a husband's privilege with her. But not as a passive experience, she knew. She was going to make love to him too. They were going to make love to each other.
Of course, she still feels some misgiving, but at this point, it's easy for her to ignore. It's the day after Christmas. The children have departed for the village, all the guests are gone, and there's nothing standing in the way between Max and Judith anymore. Max is being really shitty in his mind. He's still trying to reassure himself that his plan is somehow virtuous and that he deserves this revenge against her. So he's telling himself that, oh, if she agrees to sleep with him, then that means that she's not a virtuous lady, right? Okay, whatever, bro. But regardless of his own misgivings, the time comes. They're bundled up for warmth, and they make their way out to a small cottage on the grounds that Max has prepared for this special occasion. He's built up a fire, and yes, brought plenty of fresh bedding. For a moment, there's hesitation, where Max asks her if she really wants to do this. Listen, he may be manipulating her emotions to get something out of her and get his stupid revenge against her, but hey, he's asking for consent. We love a respectful man.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man.
But Judith is 101% on board, and soon enough, things are getting hot and heavy between the two of them. Now, for an older romance novel, the scene is surprisingly explicit, and it's really well written. I would give this a solid M rating on AO3, and hit that kudos button. The scene also had a very sweet interaction that actually helped to cement their chemistry for me, despite it being really late in the book.
Yes, she said, and her hands began to work at the buttons on his greatcoat, and she was lifting it away from his shoulders and sliding it down his arms. It fell to the floor. Are you warm enough? She was undoing the buttons of his coat. Am I warm enough? He tightened his arms around her, imprisoning her hands against his chest, and laughed down at her. Have you ever asked a more foolish question in your life, Judith? She laughed back at him, the sound low and seductive and carefree. Probably not, she said, but you know what I meant. Let's take our time, shall we? He asked her, brushing his lips across hers. We have all afternoon. Let me kiss you silly before we undress each other, will you? She laughed again. Kiss me silly, she said. I like the sound of it. Let me kiss you silly too. She did not need to. Just holding her like this, the heat from the fire warm in his arms about her, her face turned up to his, laughing made him want to shout with joy. He wanted to pick her up and spin her about and about until they both collapsed from dizziness. But the room was very small, and as like as not they would collapse into the fire. He laughed down at her. Proceed then, he said. No quarter given or asked? Never, she said, and she put her arms up about his neck and lifted her mouth for his kiss.
But it turns out that their chemistry isn't enough. Afterwards, Amy falls asleep, and when she wakes up, she sees Max standing by the fire, and she tells him that she loves him. But Max looks at her and says that it's ridiculous, that it was all a Christmas flirtation, and that he's sorry if he led her on, but he didn't mean any of it. Now, Judith is of course completely devastated as it dawns on her that this was his plan for revenge. Not to humiliate her publicly in some kind of social faux pas, but to make her love him and then just dispose of her. the same way that she did to him all those years ago. So, with nothing else to say, she just gets dressed and leaves. This part makes me so sad because for all of Max's faults, when we see who he is when he's not focused on bitterness and revenge, is the exact kind of man that Judith really wants in a partner. He's kind, he loves children, he cares about the less fortunate, and all of those things. But he was just too consumed with anger to see that she had grown and changed in all this time too. It's especially icky when you realize how he decided to complete his revenge, considering that this is the 19th century and, birth control doesn't exist. And we, as the reader, know that it's the period of Judith's menstrual cycle when it's easiest to get pregnant. And she takes the risk because she is convinced that Max is ready to confess to her. But instead, he just takes advantage of her love. We've reached the lowest point of the story because not only is Judith experiencing the worst betrayal imaginable, but Amy too is left reeling. It's on a final walk from the manor to the village where Amy is holding out small hope that Spencer will confess his feelings to her. But as they near the manor, Amy's hopes are completely dashed.
Amy, he said softly, it would not work. Believe me, it would not. You are a lady and brought up to the life of a lady. An empty, empty life, she thought, concentrating on their clasped hands. She nodded. I think maybe I should not come here in the next few days, he said. She nodded again. Goodbye then, my dear, he said after a pause. For the first time in more than 2 years, I wish things could be a little different, but they cannot. She looked up into his face. I wish it too, she said. I wish other people did not always know what is best for me. Is it my size, I wonder? Is it because I look so much like a child to be protected? She withdrew her hand from his. Goodbye, Spencer. Thank you for these few days. I cannot tell you all they have meant to me. And she turned around and was gone up the steps and into the house before he could even return his arms to his sides. He stood, for a long time, frowning after her.
Everyone is getting their heart broken left and right in this story at this point, and I am not happy about it. When Judith and Amy reunite back at the manor after their horrible day, they comfort each other and agree to cut their visit short and head back to London early as soon as possible the next day. It is a dark and lonely night for the Denby household. Max, too, is unable to sleep, and he's wandering the house, wondering if he made the right decision. Even though, it's kind of late for that. It turns out that vengeance wasn't as good of a feeling as he thought it would be. As he's wandering, though, he runs into Judith's young son, Rupert, who was having a nightmare and is missing his papa, Andrew. So Max actually ends up rocking the boy to sleep and telling him stories about his dad. Don't worry, they're good stories. And again, it's moments like this throughout the story. I didn't have time to mention a lot of them, but he is a very loving person, and all of the bitterness and stuff gets stripped away when you see him interacting with children. And it's especially nice to see that after the things that he said, he's not treating her children any differently. The next morning dawns. Now, Judith has resigned herself that there is no future with Max, and she's ready to depart for London. But Amy isn't finished yet. As soon as she's dressed, she races off to the village, determined to declare her feelings, even if it means rejection. She doesn't get all the way there, however, before she runs into Spencer, coming the opposite direction.
She drew a deep breath. I have had material comforts and a large home and a protective family all my life, she said, fixing her eyes on the roadway ahead. And though I've always counted my blessings, I've been unhappy, Spencer. There's been nothing to give my life purpose, nothing to warm my heart. He was patting her hand. The only bright moments in my life have been the times when my brothers and some cousins came with their children, she said. I always loved to play with them and talk with them. I used to think that I would give up every last thing, every last brick of the house and rag of clothing just to extend those times. It was foolish, of course. One cannot in reality live without even the basic necessities of life. But I felt it and believed it, and still believe it in part. Amy, he said. They had stopped walking, and he had turned to her. You were wrong, she said, her voice agitated. You said that it would not work. Perhaps it could not from your point of view, but you were wrong about me. He laid 2 gloved fingers against her lips. Don't, he said. Don't say any more. But she pulled back her head. Yes, she said, I will. It is not fair that just because I am a woman. Shh, he said, and he set his hands on her shoulders and pulled her against him. Don't say any more, Amy. I came to say it. She looked earnestly up into his face. I will be sorry forever after if I do not, for once in my life. Shh, he said, and he kissed her briefly on the lips. You are a woman, Amy, like it or not, and we live in a society which would make you feel ashamed of having to say such a thing. And you do not need to say it, when I can just as easily say it myself, and propriety will not be outraged. Will you marry me, my dear?
Hooray for Amy! Yes, after all the things that she had to endure with her family for her entire life, she's finally getting happiness, and of all the characters in this story, she deserves it. Honestly, this could be the end of the book for me, but unfortunately, Amy and Spencer are not the main characters, and we still have something to wrap up with Judith and Max. Judith confronts Max in his study. He has been wrestling all morning with his actions, he's not sure what to do, but Judith is not having any of those wishy-washy thoughts. She calls him out on his behavior, and she even goes as far as to ask forgiveness for how she treated him in the past. But she knows that he loves her, and asks that they can both move forward in peace. She's so mature. She's too good for him. Oh my god. She even says openly that she knows that she could be pregnant, but goes as far as to say that she will know that the child was begotten and conceived in love, and that won't change her feelings about the child whatsoever, regardless of what Max wants to do with her or not. It's at this that Max completely breaks down, and he jumps into action when she firmly says that she's ready to move on. He asks her to stay, and asks her to marry him. Before she can even answer, Kate and Rupert come running into the room and they start yelling at Max about how they don't want to leave Denby because they love it here.
How would you like to stay forever and a day? The Marquess asked. If your mama would just consent to marry me, you could do so, and go sledding and skating and have plenty of company from the children in the village, and I could teach you to ride a real horse, Rupert, and to play cricket as well as your papa. And Kate could see the puppies when they are born in the spring and train one to sleep on her bed all night without one sweating the blankets or being sick all over the floor. Yes, Rupert yelled. Famous. Will you, Mama? Will you, Mama? Dark and pleading eyes gazed up at her from beneath Kate's soft auburn curls. Will you, Judith? Lord Denby's eyes smiled into hers. Will you make it unanimous? It is already 3 against 1. One thing I have noticed about you from the start, she said, is that you will quite unscrupulously get to me through my children. Guilty, he said. And it works every time, she said. This time too? Yes. You will marry me? She smiled broadly at him. My Christmas Bayou, Judith said fondly, smiling down at him as he suited action to words.
And that brings our story to an end, with everyone, presumably, living happily ever after. Okay, so, final thoughts. I will say I enjoy how the ending scene calls back to the early parts of the novel, where Max will ask Judith something, and then her children will come in, and then she kind of has to give an answer that she isn't necessarily ready to give. I actually realized that sounded really negative. But I'm gonna be honest, I liked the ending. I liked this book a lot, honestly, and I can genuinely see myself rereading it. Maybe it's just because I tend to look at Regency novels through kind of rose-tinted glasses. I really like the setting, and so I'm more forgiving with it than I am with, more modern books. But that doesn't mean that I'm excusing every flaw that this story has. My biggest issue with this story isn't actually Max's character. I think that his revenge plot is honestly pretty solid for, story purposes, and it does work to serve the larger narrative. He doesn't feel like a terrible person, but someone who was genuinely hurt when he was younger, and he never properly dealt with those feelings. My greatest issue is with the part at the end with him having sex with her, despite the fact that she could be pregnant and he's just planning to drop her, especially considering that they are high-class people in this era. Like, this could be completely life-ruining for her to have this child with a man that she isn't married to. But that aside, I did enjoy that aspect of the plot. I also like that his plan doesn't hinge on public humiliation because 1, I fucking hate that trope, and 2, I just feel like it's a pretty misogynistic trope, so this one does kind of subvert that. My greatest issue with this novel is that the ending happens really fast. You probably noticed that I kind of sped through it, and that's because the entire finale takes place over 3 chapters, and one of those chapters is literally everyone just sitting around the house being like, woe is me, everything is so sad, worst Christmas ever. I also want to say that Max never actually apologizes for what he puts her through. I mean, I assume that it happens, like, off-screen, but it's not in the novel, so it doesn't count. But at the end of the day, this was a fun book. I got to read it for free. I honestly highly suggest looking at the Internet Archive if you ever want to find something random to read. And for a final rating, I give this book a 4 out of 5 Christmas trees. I'm feeling a little generous because 'tis the season. If you made it this far into the video, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. This channel isn't just meant for me to review old books, but it's definitely something I enjoy doing. I like talking about old stuff. It's fun, whether it's things that I find at the thrift store or online. And a lot of my future video plans, and believe me, there's a lot of them, hinge on that sort of thing. So if you're interested, I hope you stick around. Otherwise, I'm Emma. Thanks for watching, and see you next video. Happy holidays!